Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all. Thank you for joining us. It is my pleasure to welcome you to today's Frost & Sullivan Growth Opportunity Briefing, 6 mega growth opportunities in Israel and UAE.
My question is, what are the key trends that you see from an economy ministry that will perceive the drive and will drive the future of growth in Israel? While we get Mr. Shail back to answer his question about UAE.
Yeah, so thank you very much, Manny. Thank you for Frost & Sullivan for this event and for all the panels and the viewers. I think that the Israeli government, for the last few years, you can see the way we are open the business sector and make it easy for multinational companies or for foreign investors to come and to invest in Israel. If I'm talking with all kinds of segments in the ease of doing business, taking down all kinds of barriers and obstacles in the Israeli bureaucracy and the regulations. We can talk about the ease or the tax benefits that Israel government is more and more bringing to the table for the investors or the private sector overall. And when I'm saying about the tax benefits, there is also grants and others that we are providing for those foreign investors. We can talk about to salary subsidize, and we can talk about all kinds of grants for industries and the preferred areas in Israel, and even specific sectors that we are trying to make it lucrative for the world to see and to come to Israel, not only for the technologies, but also for the capabilities of manufacturing here in Israel. And I'm sure that Ron will be known to tell about it even more about those capabilities here in the country. Even the establishment of my unit, Invest in Israel, in the government, in the Ministry of Economy, it's a saying for the world, we are here for you. You have our backwinds, and we will help you throughout all the way in everything that you will need, and Israel is open for business. So the thing that I've said until now is trends that the Israeli government opened the gates for the whole world. And even now we are starting to talk more and more about specific bridges with the UAE to know what is your needs and what our capabilities both ways, and to make sure how those bridges can make those gaps even smaller. And before that, we talked about specific sectors, and I know that there are also sectors that are very interesting in the UAE. For example, digital health. It's a specific sector that we are always open new routes for investors and for the industry here in Israel. We can talk about life science. We can talk about cyber technologies. We can talk about technologies and industries in agri-tech and food tech. All of those things, there are sectors that the Israeli government is very pushing forwards, and I know that it's also interesting for the Emirates to open, and it's new sectors that are trying to go more and more deeper.
But what are your views about collaborating with the business ecosystem in UAE?
That's an interesting question. I think we need, first of all, to observe the two economies, the indicators in those economies. I think we both, UAE, when we are talking about the ecosystem, have a very stable economies, almost the same credit rating, almost the same positive growth for the future, and it's open those two economies. It's make them very stable, and to know how to talk with which one on the another. We can also see the volume of the transaction in those countries. It's almost the same. The interesting part is that in the UAE, the volume of each investment is very big, while in Israel, the foreign investments regarding to the UAE, of course, is we have a lot of foreign investments, but quite in a small amount. So I'm always like to see those possibilities when we are talking about economic ties. Let's first see about those two economies. And when we are looking into the UAE indicators in those investments, we can see that 70% of the investments are usually going outside for companies that are located outside, also foreign companies. So I think that the possibilities of working together in those areas are very, very high, because the UAE DNA are very, very open for foreign investment, and Israel is looking for getting inside investors. So there is a very, very interesting way that those two economies can work together. Now, the UAE is also very known as her very good rating in the ease of doing business, in attractiveness for FDI, and in its location, as my previous said already, and the tax policies of the government. So there is a lot of lucrative opportunities between those economies, as I said before, also about the lucrative opportunities in the Israel government side. So first of all, this is the two economies when we are looking one another. Now, my two predecessors, also Uriel and also Ron, the Chamber of Commerce and the Manufacturing Association, they are representing the business sector. They are representing the Israeli ecosystem, and you can see how it's open for business, and we will do everything that in our power to bring more and more investors. And as I said from the earlier on, invest in Israel. We have four main pillars. We will do target and business for investors. We will do the marketing. We will find all the opportunities that we will need. We have specific specialists in different sectors that will help you throughout all the way in the investment to make sure that you will get all the benefits that you can get from the Israel government, and from the other side, that you will know what is the stages and what is the roadmap of the investments. And for example, if you will need to find a connection in the Israeli ecosystem, that's exactly what you will do. You will get from the unit. And as you said, Manny, in the beginning, Invest in Israel has a service center of more than 100 companies that already coming to the center, and we are helping them with government relations. And every obstacle in the bureaucracy or in the regulations, we will help them to make sure that it will not be an obstacle in taking to the next step. Now, when we are talking about ecosystem, the thing that we are in Israel as a government, we like to do is to let to the private sectors to talk together. So I'm thinking that the power of the market needs to know, and this is why it's so important that also Ron and also Uriel is here. And also from the other side, from the UAE, we need that the thing that I'm expecting from the ecosystem in the end, we need that the private sector will talk one with the other. The businessmen will talk one with the other. We want that the academia will start to talk one with the other. The entrepreneurs will talk one with the other. The thing, I think that the government need to give all the support, and we have a lot of entities here in the Israeli government that will do that, but in the end, it needs to come from the market. The market power will do those things, and from the thing that we are seeing so far and that we knew already, there is a lot of demand and supplies. It depends from which side you will see it, and I'm seeing only a bright future for those things. And And about the sectors, I think everybody said it before. I think we can see that also the UAE starting to open more than the traditional sectors of oil and gas and real estate in the country, and goes more and more tech, digital health, life science, agri-tech, food tech, as we said before, water technologies. So there is a lot of openness, and it's a very interesting period of time with those changing of way of thinking for the next steps between those countries.
Lovely.